Road in Mondovi that ran from Fairchild to Mondovi. What was the last train went through here in 71? 75. Okay, so more recent than that. Dave has great interest in the railroad. He started out when he was little, he had model trains, but then as he got older, he got interested in the real stuff. And so he parlayed that interest into not only about trains, but different routes and all the different things that go into running a railroad. And he got interested in the Mondovi Road itself, so he did a lot of research on that and ended up writing an article for the Northwest Lines magazine. It's actually an organization David is involved with. It's about 3,000 members. David sits on the board of directors for the Northwest Historical Society. 2004, he planned their convention in the cities, which was quite a big deal. And I'll turn it over to Dave.
Well, this is going, I'll kind of give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to do a little bit about proposed lines that weren't built through Mondovi, one that finally was, and how that changed the town, or could have. And kind of just a general overall history of the route from Fairchild to Mondovi. So 1 second for the...
Oh, yeah, we can.
What this is, I'm going to start with kind of doing a map of lines that were proposed through Mondovi but not built, since most of them would predate the actual line that was done. Kind of not to go too much time on this, but the first line, it doesn't.
There we go.
All right. Just because it doesn't fall. First line is kind of vague. When the West Wisconsin, the first line in western Wisconsin was building from Toma to St. Paul, one of the roads they looked at was going diagonally across. For instance, both my grandpa's and great-grandpa's farm south of town, the original landowner was the West Wisconsin. They owned quite a bit of property in Buffalo and Trumbull County. So it would have been the main line through here, the one that eventually ended up going through Elk Mound, Altoona, in that area. They chose the more northern route through Fairchild, Eau Claire, Menominee. The next line was the Green Bay and Lake Pepin. When they were building across from Green Bay to the Mississippi River, they sent surveyors from Wabasha to Alma, following the river, and then cut over to Maryland. Eventually they decided on Trumbull River Road through Independence and Winona Junction instead. So that line didn't get built. And it kind of went a little out of chronological order. There was a couple more proposals after the line was built. One was the Green Bay Western still wanted to get to St. Paul. So they surveyed a line from Maryland to Mondovi, kind of going cross country to St. Paul, which would have been a good outlet for them since right now they only ended at Winona. Most likely, since Mondovi already had a rail line then, I'm thinking they probably would have gone south of town, like where the tourist park is right now. Give an idea how that could have changed the town, is we would have had a depot there, probably some shippers, and possibly could be a little settlement called South Mondovi, which of course never occurred. Often when the second railroad comes in, that's what will happen, is you'll find a little subsection of the town. The final main line that could have been built here, as late as 1910, 1915, the Northwestern, or Omaha actually, was improving their main line, including wanting to find a way to bypass Knapp Hill. So they were going to extend their line from Elmwood, across the Chippewa River to Mondovi, and then upgrade the branch to Fairchild, and use that as a main line primarily for freights. And that could have made quite a few changes. Then they would have needed a yard, they would have needed a roundhouse, they would have needed boarding houses. So that would have changed Mondovi quite a bit, having a main line going through, but they decided just to upgrade their existing line, which is now the Union Pacific main line. The last one that didn't get built, and this one wasn't real serious, was an interurban line. Somebody wanted to build one from Mondovi to Eau Claire. There's just a couple vague references in the Mondovi paper about it. This would have been an electric line, mainly for passenger milk, things like that. And the way it would have been nice, you could have boarded a little electric car in front of the Hellwig's department store and been in Eau Claire an hour later. But if it would have been built, it probably wouldn't have lasted very long. A lot of those only made it a few years going through rural areas. Next slide. Well, this is done with the Village of Maryland, I think a little before 1900. This is from Bob Giles' collection. He used to live in Maryland. It's kind of hard to read it on here, but you can see where Maryland shows they're going to build the yard there. And then you can see where they have their line going to Mondovi, in addition to the existing branch. And their main line is going to go on to St. Paul again. It would have brought quite a bit more business, more employees, possibly some industry here. But by then, most of the railroad construction was done and it was never completed. Next slide. This is Nathan Caldwell Foster of Fairchild. He was a lumberman, owned a lot of sawmills, logging railroads, and he decided he wanted to get into the railroad business also. So his plan was to build from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan to somewhere on the Mississippi and maybe even beyond there. His first line made it from Mondovi, or actually from Fairchild to Mondovi, completed in 1890. Went to Osseo in 87, Eliva in 89, and then completed to Mondovi in 1890. He called it Sault Ste. Marie and Southwestern. The idea is to go from Sault Ste. Marie and as far southwest as he could get money for to build. In 1891, his plan was to follow the Buffalo River down to Elma. And I don't know if he ran out of money or for whatever reason, it just ended right here, ended at the Buffalo River down by the canning plant. He also built a Fairchild Northeastern, which went from Fairchild up to Owen, which again was supposed to go into Sault Ste. Marie, and went from Foster to Cleghorn, and that was going to go on to the Chippewa River and beyond too, but again, they only made it so far. And it was kind of a small operation to start out with. Just a couple dates, I want to make sure I have everything correct. Yeah, completed in 1890. Started with one round trip from Mondovi. It left here fairly early in the morning. They built a small engine house, a one-stall engine house, down along the river. Went to Fairchild, connected with the mainline trains. He rented space from the Omaha's depot there, and then came back to Mondovi. And had very few employees, mostly section crews, depot agents, but one train crew that ran Monday through Friday, or excuse me, Monday through Saturday with the mixed train. It lasted until, it was 1893 when he sold out, well actually it sold, but the Omaha gained control of it. And one of the stories is that they were afraid that if he did build to Elma, the Chicago, Burlington, and Northern would take over and run trains from Elma to Mondovi and get the Fairchild, which today means nothing, but in 1893, the Omaha didn't want to have a big road like the Burlington in the heart of their Eastern Division in Fairchild, Maryland, that area. So they took over, replaced the people from Osseo and Fairchild with their own people from Hudson. And starting in 1893, we were part of the much larger Omaha system. Go ahead, the next one. Oops, a little out of order here. This is actually a little bit later picture. I found a more recent, a different one, which I actually put in the book here, which I didn't have scanned. This is actually about 1905. There's the Omaha depot in Fairchild, and there's the Fairchild Northeastern one. So the Mondovi trains that the lead came in behind the depot actually. So you would have gotten off there in the morning, gotten on a mainline train, which you see right there, to go to Chicago, Twin Cities, Eau Claire, anywhere like that. Go ahead, next slide. This is the 1895 Omaha timetable. Now, oh, it's cut off at the bottom. You can just pick it up just for a second, or there's still only one train a day, originating in Mondovi at 5:45 in the morning. It's the Fairchild at 7 to make all the connections, take the mail. Leaves again at 12:20. He gets back at, I think that says 3:05. So one round trip, Monday through Friday, one crew working the entire time. But traffic starts increasing. You can go ahead and set that down. Go on to the next one. And then they also have the mainline connections, because again, at that time, the only way to get more than 10 or 15 miles would have been by rail. Yeah, okay, that's right. It's pretty much the same thing right here. The single round trip out of Mondovi each day. All right, go ahead. This is kind of caught up a little bit, but at first the trains originated in Mondovi. There's the one-stall engine house built in 1891. The little, I think it was a 50-foot turntable. So each night they would turn the engine, put it in. I can see the smoke jack. So we faced it out and head out the next morning again. You can see what eventually became the supposed equity right there behind it. The depot was directly behind too, where you can't see on here. And these were very common engines. They call 4 furrows American style. And again, at this time, it was still one round trip a day. The engine house was torn down in 1826. It actually went out of service around 1900. They put it back in as more trains were added. And by 1926, all trains originated in either Fairchild, Maryland, and later Marshfield. So that was long gone. And I've gone down and I can't find any sign of the engine house, no footings or anything like that. Okay, go ahead. Oh, it's just kind of cut off here too. One thing I mentioned I was going to talk about was how Mondovi changed. Between 1855 and 1890, we got up to 503 people. In the 15 years following the railroad, it went up 1,000 people, or it went up to 1,500, an addition of 1,000. Because now all of a sudden you could ship things. You didn't have to load them in a wagon to go to Elma or Durand or Eau Claire. You could load here, or vice versa, bringing things in. The John Gunn Brewery put a warehouse down there. Now we can bring beer in. Farmers would have much easier. They got much more per bushel for shipping because now you could pay a freight and not have to load things on wagons 15 to 20 miles to the nearest rail or waterway. So we gave 1,000 people in 15 years. It's taken 100 years to get the next 1,000. So that shows where the bulk of Mondovi's growth came from. Is that good feedback? Maybe I could up or forward a little bit, I should say, or is that going to hard to do?
I don't know, we need it back.
One second, I'm just going to see if we can get a little more full screen here. Yeah, that's fine. One thing I was going to say was, too, as far as some of the advantages to Mondovi, clothing stores in Eau Claire put ads in the Mondovi paper. They said, if you go to Eau Claire, we'll pay your rail fare for you. So you were able to hop on the train, do your shopping in Eau Claire, get your refund at the food store, and come back the next day. My great uncle Mike was born in 1899, and he always told the story that when he was little, they'd do that. Get it in the morning, change at Fairchild, get to Eau Claire, spend the night in Eau Claire, then vice versa, come back the next day. So now if you go to the malls in Eau Claire, it's a 2 to 3 hour trip, including your shopping. At that time, it was a 2-day trip. But it gave you a lot of opportunities you didn't have before 1890. That's it, go next one. This is a waybill from the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad. Somebody, I believe it says J.J. Gilman, but I can't read the initials for sure, ordered a box of books in 1907. Either way, you could have gotten those books, but it's gimmicks much easier. They would have went probably from Philadelphia to Harrisburg, Harrisburg to Chicago, and then on the Northwestern Omaha system, maybe the rest of the way. She could have walked down to the depot and got her books in 2 days versus what it would have been 15, 20, 30 years earlier before we had that option. The next one. And traffic increased by all the towns by quite a bit. Again, it's a little hard to read this distance, but now they've added a second round trip a day. Both were mixed trains, one engine, anywhere from 2 to say 5 to 10 passenger cars. And they started out with just one combination baggage coach and then switched to 2 cars, which we'll see some pictures of in a couple minutes here. So now you had a departure at 4:40 in the morning. You get to Fairchild at 6:15. That would have loaded mail from the overnight trains. We brought it back to Mondovi by 9 a.m. So now you can get your mail, or if you want to make mainline connections. And then left again at 10 a.m. for 11:50 at Fairchild to catch, say, the afternoon trains that would have been going to places like Chicago, and then back to Mondovi again, and using that engine house. Right, next one. This is a ticket that, thanks Darlin, I was able to get a copy of from Stromdasio. Tickets are really hard to find. After about 1930 or so, nobody really rode the trains out of here, so it's hard to find an actual ticket. This is one that somebody purchased to go from Stromdasio. Next one. In the backside, it was stamped by the depot agent in Osseo in 1904. And if you can find these stamps today, the actual hardware that did it, they're very valuable. They're really hard to find, especially something this old. And there would have been an identical one at the depot here in Mondovi. Right, go ahead. And this is the train in 1907. The postcard calls it the Omaha stage. It's the only time I've ever seen that term used. Approaching Mondovi, it's got one boxcar, a full coach, and then a combination baggage mail-in coach behind it. Probably never went fast, probably 25 miles an hour, so what it would be the dirt road in your horse and wagon. Right, next one. This is a pretty well-known postcard. I've seen it in different books published on railroading. It's just the general, the railroad area of Mondovi. Do you guys see it okay? The depot, and I don't know if this is the original depot or not. The original one burned, and I think this is the replacement with the roof line like that. Depots tend to burn a lot at that time with the coal stoves. The windmill behind it, the water tower. It's kind of cut off here, but there's the engine house over there. Looks like a boxcar or two, a baggage mail, and then the full coach. Judging from the shadows, it looks like it's in the morning, so this must be probably the first train coming back to Mondovi in late morning. It wasn't for the most part, it's a pretty compact area. They never expanded up the hill to like the creamery or to the lumber yard. Everything pretty much stayed with just a few tracks right down along the river there. All right, excellent. This is a pretty well-known, it's a J. Foster Adams photo. At one time, one of the more well-known railroad photographers lived in Fairchild. And his negatives, I think, are in Mid-Continent, North Freedom right now. This would be the train approaching Fairchild at a slight grade there. So you see a little extra smoke from perhaps the fireman did that for the photographer. 3 or 4 cars along with a couple mail cars. Excellent. And this is the train in Fairchild. Either probably just arrived or just getting ready to go back. You can see the fireman, engineer, probably conductor, brakeman, as far as from the uniform. And not a bad looking train, actually. There were water towers in Fairchild, Osseo, and Mondovi, and coal was only available, as far as I could tell, only on Maryland. So I'm not sure what they did at some of the other towns when they wanted to start using coal. All right, go ahead. This is the 1916 timetable. Now they've added a 3rd train. It's a freight-only train, but it does carry passengers in the caboose. And you also notice that there aren't, I take that back, looks like there still is one train originated in Mondovi yet. So you've got your regular passenger trains that have run for a while now, and the way freight, the local freight, which you could ride in the caboose. The freight crews hated it, so the conductor would probably be a little cranky, but if you did want to, you did have that option. So on every day, there were 6 trains on the line, 3 each way, and occasionally there still would be an extra. So there were times when there were 8 trains running, which made it actually a fairly busy little line for a few years. And this is right before they started improving highways, and where cars, trucks got fairly common. So by now, Mondovi was about 1,500 people. Railroad is still the primary way to transport. You still have good connections in Fairchild. You can show, they show one connection on the main line to the Twin Cities, but there were other trains too you could connect it with. Okay, excellent. And this is the final rail map of everything built in western Wisconsin. There's the line to Mondovi, the other 2 Foster lines, to Clayhorn, up to Owen, and then the lines that weren't built. There could have been a potential line right there, which didn't get built at all. Most of the lines right here are all abandoned now. Just one quick note too, I just talked to a couple guys here that actually run this. This section right here is, oops, right about there, is kind of in service again as a motor car group. You can ride the little track speeders on weekends and certain other times on the former Milwaukee Road. They restored enough to run on that. It's actually pretty interesting. All right, excellent. This is the Osseo Depot. Similar in design to the rest. There were real big depots on the line. It looks like a train that just came, well, actually looks pretty quiet there right now. I see another picture where they had the mail stacked on the baggage cart. There you can see their water tower and one windmill. The footings for that water tower are still visible. There. All right, go ahead. And this is the Mondovi Depot, the second Mondovi Depot. The first one again burned after about 10 years. I went down to today and there's a metal building right here right now, a brown metal building, looks like a storage or something like that, but you can still see the foundation over on this side of it, maybe about 25 feet of it or so. You can also see the foundation of the section house, a little block house that was right to the right of that, and the water tower. The cement footings for that are still visible in Mondovi. Right, excellent. And here's a train ready to go back to Fairchild. It's hard to tell for sure from the lighting, but it looks like it's late in the day, so it probably was the afternoon train, maybe running a little late. Looks like they're loading some things into the baggage express compartment. The engine house is still standing at this point, and I don't know if I have a year on this, but I'm guessing about 1910 maybe, just judging from the layout of everything that how new the depot is. Okay, next one. Again, it's kind of hard to see the top of this, but this is an RPO stamp. They did sort mail on the train. One note I found said they only sorted mail from 1904 to 1917. So they had clerks in the car. You could drop things off the mailbox at the post office. A lot of them had slots on the side of the mail car. And the clerk would sort the mail, hand stamp it. This is the Fairchild Mondovi train 270 on October 25th, 1909. It was very efficient, especially before zip codes. You drop it in Mondovi. If it was going to Osseo, they'd have it 3 hours later, possible for same-day delivery. The mail service as a whole ended in 1937. They stopped carrying packaged or pouched mail at that point, which is that time when the line was really kind of in a decline already. It's a slightly different picture than what we saw before. I'm not sure. It's just the same thing, the mixed train between, I think this is taken between Oliva and Mondovi. We had a few directs on it, which is common on every line. I'm not sure exactly where this was on the line. The picture was dated, I think this came from actually the Mondovi Historical Society. May 26, 1910 was the date on it. Good, next one. And then they had another one the same year. This one was near Strum on August 29th, 1910. It's kind of cut off a little bit here, but you can see in that car, that's labeled sold. There's some barrels in there. Much of the retailers just got in, it's almost like UPS or Federal Express today or something like that. They would just get a few individual items in by rail. These 2 boxes I brought in are written Farmer Store and an M for Mondovi on them. And so it's possible it wasn't a full carload for a shipper, but something that came in from the freight houses in either Chicago or Duluth or something like that with hardware and other items, and then would be unloaded in Mondovi and then distributed to the different retailers in town. All right, excellent. And this is kind of a photocopy of a photocopy type thing, so it's not a real good quality, but this is Strum. Strum had a series of elevators and mills along the line, a real small depot. One that's interesting here in the Eau Claire archives, there's some sort of correspondence out of the Eau Claire depot. And they hired a guy in Strum to take the mail with the carts to the post office and back 2 or 3 times a day. And in the correspondence, they said he kept getting drunk and forgetting to do it. So they were trying, it's a little different then. Now they wouldn't even let you clean up your desk, they made you leave. At that time, they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And they said, well, he keeps forgetting to come and picking up the mail because he's at the bar. That was in 1937. Then the final letter was, well, we're cutting the mail off anyway on November, or whatever the exact date was. I think it was like November 20th, so it doesn't matter now. So that kind of resolved its own problem there. The depots, too, I'll just mention this real quick. All the depots, of course, had agents. In later years, they had almost nothing to do. They would come in, this would be in the 50s, record whatever business there was, and maybe sit and read the paper for 5 or 6 hours. I know a guy in Iowa said he used to go swimming all day because there was nothing to do on the branch lines by the 50s. But the government heavily regulated railroads, which was one of the problems, so they said, no, you have to keep someone there anyway. They did finally close the depots in the late 50s, most of them, 56, 57, Strum and Oliva. And I'll get to Mondovi's in a little bit. All right, next one. This one kind of got cut off. This is a partial list of employees in Mondovi in 1922. There's 7 here listed. It's in a book that's alphabetical, so I had to search through names. And I must have missed a couple. For instance, the agent isn't on here. There would have been an agent. I'm thinking it probably would have been another clerk just to handle selling tickets, doing the paperwork, taking the Western Union Telegraph traffic, things like that. But there's 7 of them listed here. A clerk, a guy, Humphrey, the section foreman for working on the track, 2 section laborers. Every town had 2 to 5 people that would just go up and down the tracks each day, replacing ties, checking the bolts, looking for any problems, anything like that. They actually had 3 of them. And then 2 guys, they call them warehousemen. I assume that means they worked in the freight house because they get everything was done. A lot of manual stuff came in. It's not all that different than a UPS terminal today. So there's at least 7 people worked in Mondovi, probably at least 9, I'm thinking. By this time, all the trains bridging on the other end of the line, so there's nobody working in out of train service here. Let's see. All right, next one. And again, this kind of got cut out too, but this is not on the screen, but this is the shippers in Oliva and Mondovi in 1923. This was put out by the Northwestern and Omaha railroads. Probably promote the shippers so people could try to get more business out of them. So it doesn't have people that just receive odds and ends like the retailers and wholesalers in town. One thing I should actually mention right now is I brought a bunch of these around. There's some of this stuff is also in the issue of Northwestern Lines that has the Mondovi article. These are for sale for $7. But the main thing is because I got the complete list in here of all the towns along the line from Fairchild to Mondovi. It's a little more detailed then. A lot of farm products, a lot of dairy products. Every town had a coal yard, every town had the lumber. And I don't have it listed on here, but I got a list of the first shippers in the 1890s, and tobacco was shipped out of Mondovi actually too in the 1890s, along with wool. Apparently there were some sheep farmers in the area. Just all things changed over the years. All right, next one. This is the 1926, 11/14/1926 timetable. Now they're starting to decline starts. They're down to 2 trains. The mixed train, or the freight train, was taken off, and now they're down to 2 mixed trains again, as both freight and passenger service started to scale back a little bit. It started with the coal strike when they were short of coal, and then they decided, well, we need just 2 trains. Still a fair amount of business, but it's starting to decline, especially the mail now, things like that are starting to go over land or over trucks instead of by rail. Next one. This is the list of the agents on the line. I won't spend too much on this too much, but there's Mondovi's. William Litt was the main agent, then the telegraph for Mondovi was DI. And you can see the other towns. Price never had a station. Linderman was just the mill on this side of Osseo. I'm not sure what FT&C means, but I assume it's just a full-class station, passenger telegraph, and freight is what I'm thinking that probably stands for, versus, say, the unstaffed stations. Right, go ahead. Yeah, it's kind of cut off on the screen, but this is taken in June 1943. Now they've down the tri-weekly service. The second train was cut off in 1934-35. In 1942, with World War II, they were short of equipment. So they decided they were going to run 1 train from Marshfield to Neillsville to Maryland, on the main line to Fairchild, down to Mondovi, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Turn it on the turntable, spend the night there, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, head back again. So this is a Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. They're turned around, ready to head back to Marshfield. They picked up a guy in Maryland, would stay with the engine overnight and keep it hot. He'd keep shoveling coal. There was a mixed train. They ran what they call a coach. It was a combination baggage coach on the rear. Very few passengers by this time. Mostly freight, 10 or 12 cars on each train, 3 days a week. This is called the Class I-1, which was one of the smaller engines. There's an almost identical one in North Freedom right now. It's in pieces, but they're eventually going to try to get it back together. It's just Northwestern's version of it. Right, next one. And this is deploy timetable 1951. I have the 42 version here. It might be a little easier to see if you want to look at it later. I can just kind of take it quick right now. They originated in Marshfield. There it is. To Maryland, and then Maryland to Mondovi, or Fairchild to Mondovi. You can see the stops on there. Price was a flag stop, the rest were regulars. And then back again. I also have some dispatcher sheets that show the times. The crews were out at Altoona by this time, and usually a wife drove down, picked up the crews, took them back home to Altoona, and then drove back down in the morning again to head back to Marshfield. So they usually didn't stay overnight, except for Fred Schuby, who would stay in the engine, keep it hot. Right, excellent. This is a Gene Anderson photo from Maryland. I was kind of like this picture. Mondovi trains all went through Maryland by this time. This is Quinn Burkhart, who was the agent in Maryland. He's working the telegraph in the corner. Remit Western was to his right, the Omaha straight ahead of him. And he still lives there, actually. He retired when they closed the Deep 184, but he's still living in Maryland. And it would have been similar scene to what you would have seen in Mondovi, just not quite as busy as it was there. This is probably 56, I'm thinking. Right, next one. Again, no one's kind of cut off. This is just kind of a shot of one of the lines around this, or one of the trains around this time out on the line. There's about 10 or 12 cars behind it. And just kind of a snapshot type picture of what a train on Mondovi line will look like around 52 or 53, maybe a little earlier than that. Next one. This is taken to Marshfield, but this is the first diesel used on the Mondovi line. It was brand new when they started using it here. It's General Motors number 1281 with the model number SW600. Also have a model of same engine here, but probably because of the light trackage. They couldn't use anything bigger on it. This was taken in the 60s, but it was used in Mondovi in 54, right ever since it came out of the factory in Chicago, and was a regular engine for many, many, many years on the line here. All right, so this is Willie Novak. He was the last agent in Mondovi and worked here for several years. This is taken inside the Mondovi Depot. Arlen, is his wife alive yet? Is that where this came from?
Right.
This is, go ahead. His wife's alive yet, and Arlen Colby was able to give me some pictures for this. Right, where he's sitting right now is where that brown pole shed is down there. And the backwaters to the Buffalo River is behind him. This is the last depot open on the Mondovi line, so we had a little more to do after they closed Strom, Osseo, Leva. And it's kind of a typical depot scene, actually. Next one. This is the section crew. I'll make sure I have these names right. Lauren, left to right, Lauren Hillegard, Mike Card in the middle, who was the foreman, and Tom Roselski, roughly 55, 56. So these guys each day would have gotten on the motor car, similar to what you see actually in this Operation Duran. The motor car shed was right over to the right of that, and again, that's what the footings are still there for. They would probably go, I'm not sure if Leva had one or not by this time. One reason the lines declined was after Ben Heineman took over the Northwestern. He was going to save it from bankruptcy, so he cut a lot of the section crews out on the branch lines. And that's when it really started deteriorating, because they have somebody going out each day, fixing joints, checking for low spots, things like that. Excellent. And this is also about that time, 56 probably. Arlen was saying this is a 1955 Chevrolet. It looks pretty new. So this is what it would look like in the later days of tri-weekly service. I don't see baggage carts out there anymore, so it could be the passenger service is probably pretty much done by then. Someone noted someone treated ties. There might have been somebody who was loading them on. He sat somewhere else for the creosote. The mill is still in business behind it. There's that section house I mentioned. You can see little tracks where the motor car went in and out, and that's the water tower was right there next to it. You can't quite see, but there's a green Omaha Road Express car just to the right of that, by the team track where you just load trucks up, unload and load. Right, excellent. Yeah, this is kind of a photocopy of a picture of a photocopy of that, but this is the Osseo Milk Dentistry United Milk. I can't remember exact name. This closed about 65. When that closed, that kind of put a big nail in the coffin on the line, because by then there was pretty light traffic then. This is one big shipper that they kind of hated to lose. Those buildings are still sitting back there in Osseo. It's those big brick ones behind the lumber company. But again, with this going, that'll put a big nail in the coffin. Right, next one. And this is about it for photos. This is one of the last trains at Strom. This is 1280, sister engine to 1281 that we saw earlier. The tracks are in horrible shape by this time. They can only use the smallest engines. They were originated in Altoona by now. They were all clear switchers. They came once a week, usually on Wednesdays from what I've heard. And I'm just going to, that's the last photos, so I'll kind of save time here. I'm just going to do a couple last quick things here. Mondovi Depot closed in 65 and was torn down in September of 66. Last official train ran June 17th, 1975, with 4 cars of fertilizer to the Equity. One railroader said they did have one more train after that. They picked up a car from the dog food plant and empty. They came grab that. I did talk to Cam Carlson from Eau Claire, who's retired now. He ran some of the last trains. He was a conductor or a brakeman. And he said they smelled horrible because they were bringing stuff into the dog food plant. So it wasn't always the best ride for the crewmen in the caboose. Engineers wanted to get back because they were on what was called a chain gang. The sooner they got back to Altoona, they get their 8 hours rest and go out sooner again. So they pushed the speed limit way above the 10 to 15 that they were allowed. It did cause a few derailments on the line because again, the track was just mud. There's no ballast or anything like that. And that's pretty much about it. There's no buildings left that I know of. Just some footings in Osseo, Mondovi, and some ties in Osseo too. And the siding behind what was long hung lumber, I guess that's burned now. And of course, there's a trail. All the bridges are intact yet. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Gradually decreased,
Yep.
you know, in their services because one of the things was the topography of this area, wasn't it, that really stalled the going ahead with furthering it?
Yeah, well, it was real sandy, so there wasn't a lot of big development. Could have been hills to the west too. We went to get over and the equivalent to Nashville, made it harder to build in Chicago or St. Paul. That would be.
Well, my dad was the conductor here in Mondovi that ran for 6 years. He was on this route, run, they called them runs. And how it all started, my grandfather was a barber in Altoona. And he had 8 children, 5 boys, and he wanted to go out and earn some money early. So my father was quite young when they hired him in Altoona for a call boy. And the call boy was their work that they should do was that there weren't many telephones at that time. And so when there was a run to go out of Altoona, my dad put in his name to be a call boy, and they'd go out and call the crew if there was a train to go out, and then that was their role. Well, then after that, he entered the train service on January 6 in 1910 as a brakeman. And they had, all through this railroad organization, they didn't have a union, but they have rights. And they dearly protected their rights. If and it was according to when they first started working, that they'd have seniority rights, and they really protected that quite specifically. And then for the people that started as brakemen, they had in their rights, they started as a brakeman, and the youngest one would have the front of the train, and then the next in line was what they called they worked on the hind end. And when my father, would talk about this, we thought that was a nod, it worked on the hind end. And then from there, then they became a conductor, and they had the same thing. They had the conductor in the front end of the train and the back of the train. And they had an organization called Altoona that they all were order of the railroad conductor, and they had their parties, and Altoona was probably most of the people that lived there were railroad people, and they were quite close.
I went to the UP Employees Club meeting last fall, and there was about 140 there, and they all keep track of each other. Yeah, it's still a big, even though not that many work at it, it's still a big organization.
They had, when I talked about this, that they didn't have a union per se, but at that time, there was periods in our country when there was calls for lots of trains, but then there are some times that there weren't that many calls for them, and so they would not take a train off. Well, that means that one crew, you see, was out of work. And I can remember during the Depression, my folks, were quite worried about this. And my dad had always, he was able to work every day that he wanted to, but he was the last person that was, if they would have taken off another train, he would have been out of work. And during that was, meaningful to me as a child, that he might not have any work. And then another thing I remember is about during the war, that my father was conductor on the trains hauling troop trains, and he wouldn't be home for a very long time. My mother would meet him with a suitcase with goodies and changes of clothes, and go and he'd have a whistle to let her know that, and it was too long and too short. And then my mother would go up to the depot and bring him his clean clothes and goodies, and then take the other suitcase back home to wash off his clothes and get clean again. And he just went back and forth and back and forth. And so then when this run came up down here at Mondovi, he really liked that, because by that time we had been, we were married down here, and then he'd see us down.
Would you home at night then? You could do some
Yes,
daytime.
And then my mother would go over to Marshfield and pick him up then on Friday night and take the crew, and I think the other women too on the crew, they'd take turns in taking them home for the weekend.
Did you ever work on the 400, the streamliners, or just?
No, my dad really didn't like passengers.
After the troop trains, he probably did.
Yeah, that's why he got out of it, that he'd rather work on the freight trains, and another factor was there were more opportunities for going out on the runs, on the freight, and they paid better. And that was a real factor with my dad. And this is his picture. And here's his picture right down here by the depot. They did by that time. You know Rosie Hellwig, don't you? Many of you. Her little girl was in school down in Gilmanton. Wynn Gilman down there said that they'd come up here someday and take a train to, I think it was Fairchild, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, my dad put on his uniform, and this is the picture then that the kids from Gilmanton got a ride on the train with Rosie Helwig's dad. And I got the other articles here. This is when my dad died, retired. And there was a bunch of other men that retired at the same time. And it's in a book that I have here of Train to Wisconsin. And this picture is, that's the picture in it. It's in that book. I'm quite proud of that.
Yes.
Statue out there that he had, and you can look at it. There's tickets in there, and the schedule of cost of the from here to there. You know, there's quite a few things in that statue. And that was issued by the Northwestern Railroad.
Well, thank you again. You're going to be around for a while, right, Dave?
Well, before I forget, I'll give one more plug for the Northwestern Historical Society. I brought a bunch of some of the magazines that covered this area. I brought a bunch of copies of the Mondovi issue. It's got quite a bit more that I didn't cover on here. And also a couple others, one that covers the Twin Cities, Eau Claire. You guys can find this, the 400 issue is pretty good. Everybody from Eau Claire wrote letters and well remembered writing on it. The Eau Claire leader organized it. But I'll be around for us after you're done with everything else. You want to look through some of this stuff. If you have more questions, go ahead. Magazines are usually about $7 or $8 each, and again, they go to the CW Historical Society.
There's a question.
May I interject a minute? My name is Arlen Colby. I grew up south of Eliva and Strum, and all of a sudden interested in trains. And I was planning on writing a little booklet story on the Mondovi line. Then Dave came out with this great article in this magazine you should look at and so on. And he concentrated mainly on Mondovi, so I decided to go ahead with my project and make more stuff on Eliva, Osseo, and Strum. Some of the pictures he had were that I was able to come up with. And one of the things I want to do in my book is memories of the line. And I would love to get some of your memories in that booklet there and stuff like that. If anybody else has that, or some pictures that Dave doesn't have and so on, because once this is gone, history, you know, is gone, you know, and we'd like to see this preserved. So Dave's been just great to help me out and stuff with research and so on. We use a lot of his stuff. So if anybody has any ideas or things that help me, I'd really appreciate contacting me tonight. Thank you.
Bob mentioned there was a big pickle factory down there by the depot.
There was one here, there's another in Osseo, I believe, correct?
There's one in Eliva too, but they don't have pictures of them. Nobody has pictures. They know what they look like, but nobody seemed to take pictures.
I know the Osseo one was fairly, I think it was fairly well known name too, I can't remember what it was. One that was mentioned too, you mentioned about the students riding. Norm Hansen told me about Neva Gunderson, I think was her name. Each year she would take her kids down to the depot to ride to Fairchild, where the Mondovi bus would go and pick them up. So technically it was still a passenger train, even though passengers didn't ride it by this time, the late 40s and early 50s. But there were things like that, like the students from Gilmanton and from Mondovi would do it just kind of as a treat. So they gave them a little bit of business in the last days. They had that old heavyweight combination baggage coach out in the rear. And you see, you could have ridden as late as 1955 or 56, including the students doing that. Anything else, sir?
I guess the lunch is ready back there, so just